I was born and raised Catholic and went through 12 years of Catholic schools. Two great aunts that are nuns, they have since passed away. So my family came from a religious community, religious life. Along the way, which many young people do after they leave home, they leave their faith, they kind of wander around, and that was me. And I left the Catholic Church, and then I had had 2 abortions, and then I got pregnant with my living son about a year after the last abortion, and the pregnancy did not go well at all. I was really sick, but throughout the pregnancy, as my son developed in my womb and he started moving and I felt life, I really understood the what I did when I had the abortions. Now, of course, being brought up Catholic, I knew that that was a grave sin to have not just 1 abortion, but 2 abortions. So that always weighed on my conscience about that. During delivery of my son, we both died. And fortunately, we were both resuscitated as well. I was, my mother swears I was in a coma for 4 days, but it was 4 days later when I woke up. And when I thought I had just delivered a baby, and it had been 4 days later. So during those 4 days, I can only assume that's when I had the experience, because my first memory of the near-death experience was because I was not dilating enough to deliver, and I had been in labor for 27 and a half hours, they were losing my son's heartbeat, so they wanted to do an emergency C-section. So when they rolled me into the operating room, the surgical room, there was only a nurse and an anesthesiologist with me. And then all of a sudden, I'm out, right? The next moment is what I remember vividly. I was watching this scene of these 2 doctors frantically working on me. I was like hovering at the ceiling, which you know from interviewing NDEs, that's typical. But it still didn't dawn on me what was going on. So I'm watching them frantically working on me, these nurses coming in and out of the room. And then I had this thought, wait a minute, that's me. I must be dead. And then it went completely black after I had that thought. Completely black. So I'm in this vast void of darkness, trying to see my hands, trying to see my feet. I don't know why I was trying to see my hands and feet, but I felt like I was straining to see something, anything, and I couldn't see a thing. And then the reality just gripped me. Terror just came through me. Fear flooding through me that I must be in hell. Some people report they are in a dark tunnel. This wasn't that. It was like I was in a void of nothingness. Just absolutely nothingness. Black like I have never seen before. A darkness. Well, you know what? I guess it wasn't even a darkness. It just was, there was no light at all. Nothing. So as I said, I'm trying to see my hands and I'm trying to see my feet. And then I realized this has got to be hell. I must be in hell. And for people that have not had near-death experiences, when you transition to the other side, you're still yourself. You still have the same memories. You're still thinking. You're still you. You're trying to process how this could be and what's going on. And so I thought back to the abortions and I thought, I deserve this. You know, I had never confessed the abortions. I never talked to God about the abortions. I acted like they never happened. Because that was my way of dealing with it. The emotional trauma was so severe when I had the abortions because I was basically forced into it. To give you guys an age time frame, I was 37 when I had my son, and I was between 33 and 37 when I had the 2 abortions. So I wasn't like this teenager that was being forced into it by a parent, but the father of my children were forcing me into the abortions. And I had a lot of emotional trauma around those abortions, so I brought that in with me to the afterlife, of course. So I knew that there was something very wrong with all of this. And I cried out to God, God, please help me. Please forgive me. Please help me. Something like that. Have mercy on me. And then I had no sooner said that when I saw this little tiny prick of white light. And I started moving towards that white light. And the closer I got to the white light, the more hopeful I felt. And little by little, this fear and terror just started subsiding, until I was in this incredible light shining over me, through me, in me, all over me. And I knew that light to be God. And I was so moved with being grateful, number one, that he saved me. Number two, that he was loving me unconditionally. Total unconditional love. Now, why was that important? Because as a Catholic, I was brought up that if you did not confess a mortal sin, when you die, you go straight to hell. That's, and basically, that's what I experienced. But when I cried out to ask for God's mercy and help, he helped me. He helped me. So I'm in this incredible light, a light that's so bright, brighter than the sun, and you cannot imagine the feelings. The feeling of unconditional love was so strong, something that I had never felt, that kind of love in the world that we live in. And total joy washed through me. A peace washed through me. All emotional and physical pain was completely gone. It was like it evaporated. It couldn't exist under the light of God. It could not exist. The only thing that can exist under God's light is the love and goodness and joy. That's all that can exist. So I sensed that there were 2 beings with me. I don't know who they are. I just wish I would have asked more questions, Sabrina. It's like, why didn't I ask more questions? But I didn't. And they gave me a choice, which blew my mind. Even on the other side, you get free will. And that is, you could choose, they told me I could choose to stay or leave. Now, I didn't hear that audibly. It was all telepathically, that I knew they were saying this to me. I wasn't afraid of them. I knew that they were there to help me and to guide me. So I had no fear being around them. I wish I would have asked them who they were. But, that's me. So, I didn't want to leave. I did not want to leave, because when you experience that kind of feeling on the other side in God's presence, oh my gosh, it's something that you never want to not feel. And it's almost torture to come back into this world that we live in. So I'm on the other side. I'm just in God's presence with these two beings are around me. And then they give me a choice. And so I said, if I stay, what will happen to my son? Or what will happen to my baby? And they said, he will be okay. So then I knew I had a son when he said that, when they told me that. He will be fine, he'll be okay. And I was just so torn. I was going back and forth in my mind. What do I do? What do I do? I mean, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave my baby. So they finally said to me, you have to make a decision now. And I said, I can't leave my baby. I have to go back. And then right when I said that, it was like, boom, I woke up. And here I thought I just had a baby. But the experience of the near-death experience is still just overwhelming me. And my body, all of a sudden, coming back into this world, the only way I can experience it, or to explain it, it's like your spirit is so expanded on the other side that coming back into this world, it's like trying to squeeze a balloon into the bottleneck of a bottle. And all of a sudden I was racked with all of this excruciating pain. And it wasn't from the C-section. It was coming back into this physical world and trying to squeeze my spirit back into this broken, body of mine. So, my mother noticed that I had woken up because I was kind of stirring around and moaning, I guess. And she said, she's awake. And this nurse came in and basically told me that I had died and that they had resuscitated me, and that my son had died and that they had resuscitated him too, but he was on life support. So, I'm trying to process all of this. So, the nurse asked me, do you want us to send a minister to you to pray? And I said, yes. And I was out of the church, so I didn't ask for a priest. I just said, it doesn't matter, just send a minister. So this minister came and prayed with me, and I asked God to save my son. And I said, if you save him, I promise I will teach him and to know you. I will bring him up to know you. Well, the next day, the neonatal surgeon came to me and said, or I should say the neonatal doctor came to me and said, we don't know what happened, but your son is completely fine. He's off life support, and we're going to keep him for another 2 to 3 weeks just to monitor him and make sure that there isn't any kind of problems. So I really feel that that was a miracle, that God answered my prayer and saved my son.
That's so amazing, and it's such a beautiful story, and I can imagine such an intense experience to go through, like having this experience first of all, and then coming back and also having to process your baby sort of fighting for his life and not knowing whether he'd make it through. And I can imagine as a new parent, even afterwards you'd still worry, right? Because you know that your baby was on life support. So I can imagine those first weeks and months you were still really very much in that stress zone.
Mm-hmm. And it was on top of all of that, the father of my son was an abusive man, and I knew that I was going to have to leave and try to make it my own way after I left the hospital. There was a bunch of drama he caused at the hospital, and I just knew that, this was going to have to happen. So I had all of this stress of trying to heal from the C-section. My son, who's now 32 years old, fighting for his life and making sure he was going to be okay. And then the stress of leaving his father and, starting a life without him and trying to find work. And I mean, it was just a horrible, horrible, stressful time when it should have been a time of joy and a time of, a time of joy. I never really got a chance to process the near-death experience because of all of this upheaval that was going on after my son's birth. And it wasn't until my grandson, my son's son that was born last year, that brought up all of this near-death experience again. And I thought about it over the years. I had done a few videos on my own channel, Eternal Life Plan, about it, but I had never really stopped and thought about, the whole near-death experience. I went back to the Catholic Church, though. I went through an abortion healing process called Rachel's Vineyard, and then I became a facilitator and then a pro-life speaker from the aspect of the emotional and spiritual disconnect that happens to women when they have abortions. So when my grandson was born and my son's wife went into labor, it scared me to death, I'll be honest with you, Sabrina. All I kept thinking about was what happened to me. Now, she's a 31-year-old, not a 37-year-old having a baby, and she had no complications, and the pregnancy went smooth, and the delivery went smooth and quick. But I had all this anxiety about it. And then, I started thinking more and more about the near-death experiences, and I started delving into it a little more. Back in 1992, nobody really talked about it, right? And I tried to reach out to, I reached out to my priest to talk about it. I was told, well, it's probably your imagination. I reached out to other people, and they said, oh, it was probably just a dream. It probably never happened. So nobody was, one, willing to listen, or even could keep an open mind about the experience that I had. So I just stopped talking about it, right? And I just kind of put it back on the back shelf, that this is something that happened to me, and I just can't talk about it. And it's kind of what I did with the abortions. I just put it on the back shelf until I could not keep it on the back shelf any longer. And going through that birth with my son, carrying my son, going through that birth, it all came flooding back to me on those abortions and what I did.
Oh, that's all right, because I definitely want to talk more about abortion and what your view is on that, because you've had this experience, and I know that it's not talked about a lot, and it's daunting and very emotionally draining for women. But before we get into that, you mentioned the father of your son being abusive, and knowing after you got out of the hospital that you had to end that relationship and figure things out on your own, which, first of all, such an incredibly brave thing to do with a newborn son. But my question is, did you understand that that relationship was not good for you because of the love that you felt during the NDE, because of the emotions that you felt on the other side? Did that have any kind of an impact in you then realizing, oh, that this shouldn't be what a good relationship would feel like?
No, it did not. It didn't have. I knew going into delivering that this was going to be my long-term plan, that I was going to have to leave and forge a life with my son and I. He was the father of the previous abortion. And so I knew when I got pregnant again, I just told him, I can't go through another abortion. I'm not going to. This is wrong. And really, I had no support around me at all to say, you should keep this baby. Not one person. I know I was not married. I was unmarried. Not one person said to me, don't get the abortion. You can do this. I know you can do this. I'm here for you to support you in any way. Not one person came forward or was even expressed any joy at all. So, and frankly, that's why a lot of women get abortions, is because they have no one to turn to. There is no one supporting them, and all everybody says is, get the abortion, get the abortion, get the abortion.
Yeah, or it's being highlighted how inconvenient it would be to let things unfold, right? So you're in a very emotional state, of course, at the time. So you're also being pushed, and imagine you having to make this very big decision and figuring out a new life for yourself, and at the same time almost people like not having any kind of faith in you and just saying, yeah, you have to get rid of it. I mean, how would you even do it? Like, no, it's going to ruin your life, it's going to ruin your plans. So that's where I want to go back to your mindset when you went through those abortions, if you would want to talk about that, because I think it's so important that we have this conversation out in the open.
Yes. Obviously, I was not in a good frame of mind. I was insecure, lacking confidence. I was a people pleaser. So, that was what I tried to do. I tried to please my parents. I tried to please, my boyfriend that was part of the problem, my son's father. So I was always trying to please people and was pleasing nobody. And so if I had had more confidence and more courage, which I did not have, I would have just stood up for myself. So the lesson through all of this was to stand in courage and believe in yourself and believe what you know that is what God is leading you to do. God did not lead me to have those abortions. I know that. When I stood in his presence, because I asked for his forgiveness and help, he gave me his mercy and forgave me and then washed me with his love and his joy so I would know what that is supposed to feel like. And that I needed to know he was always there. He always loved me and always will love me. So he gave me that beautiful gift, which, was the other thing, Sabrina, is I've often asked God, why me? Why me? Lots of people have been resuscitated, but they never had a near-death experience. Why me? I was the worst of the worst, right? 2 abortions, living in sin, and now delivering a 3rd child out of wedlock. Why me, God? I am like the worst sinner. And, there's nothing worse than a woman murdering her own children. And I don't care if they're a day old or they're 9 months old. It's wrong. Consciousness comes at the moment of conception. That's when the soul enters the embryo. And the scientists can say all they want about that's just nonsense. It is not nonsense. It is truth.
That's a very intense debate, and I'm glad that you're speaking up on it. What I want to ask you is, after you've had this experience, and of course with your Catholic upbringing, I can only imagine going through the abortions and then knowing that you're not married, it must have weighed on you, right? Because especially in the Catholic faith, we're being told that this isn't right, this is a sin. So you must have, judged yourself for those things continuously. And then receiving God's love, then you understood that God is forgiving and loving, regardless of what we have done in the past. Now, how do you look at the Christine from back then that was somehow cornered into making those decisions or pressured into making those decisions? How do you reconcile, that the past is in the past and you have to move forward now?
Well, let me make a distinction first. The distinction is I asked God for his help and mercy and forgiveness. Had I not done that, I'm totally convinced I would have stayed in hell. I do. So, you have to ask for the help. You've got to ask God to help you because of free will. He's letting you choose. Had I stayed stuck in that mindset of, well, I deserve this, I do deserve this, being in hell, I didn't. I called out and asked for his forgiveness, help, and mercy, and he gave it. So that's a key distinction when you cross over to the other side. Now, as far as, what was your question? I'm sorry, Sabrina.
No, it's how you reconcile, who you are today with the decisions you made back then. So do you look at yourself lovingly and forgivingly for what has happened in the past? Because I want to get to how do we move on from something as traumatic as this.
Got it. So obviously, I am a 69-year-old woman. I've had a lot of time to reflect back on the last 32 years, and that wounded woman that I was 32 years ago is not the wounded woman I am now. Do I still have wounds? Yes, I do. But I also know how to, because of my because of my training through Rachel's Vineyard retreats, I now know how to deal with those triggers where I didn't before. I also know my prayer life is much deeper than it was 32 years ago because of the near-death experience. I trust God. And there has been a few really bad things that have happened to me in the last 32 years, but I trusted God was going to get me through it. And I trusted his guidance, and I trusted everything that he has promised. So that has been the biggest difference. And, you know, but I will say this, Sabrina, the after effects of abortion are real. Can women ever really heal? You know, certainly God can heal us of everything. In my lifetime, though, in my 32 years, I make little tiny steps forward of healing. And I recognize those times that I'm getting better and getting better and getting better. But the abortions affected every area of my life, every area of my life. Even when I began my business 10 years ago, it was affecting my decisions. And then I recognized what was going on. Aha. So this is why I feel this way, because this is all of that ugliness from the past coming back up again. So, you know, I've got these tools that help me recognize and move forward. What I would like for women to know that have had abortions, that are suffering emotionally and spiritually, that they can get healing. There are ministries out there like Rachel's Vineyard to help them heal. The women and the young ladies that are sitting on the fence about abortions, whether they should get one or not, I can only ask you not to do it, because you have no idea the death sentence that you're putting on yourself for the rest of your life. You never stop thinking about it, because here I am, 69 years old. I have one son. I could have had 3 children, right? And a handful of grandchildren right now. So every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, I think about what would they look like? What would their life have turned out to be? You know, who would they have married? You know, how many children would they have had? So as you get older, you start seeing the empty seats around your own dinner table. And this became really stark with me when both my parents died. Now it's just only my son and I, right? I'm still single after all these years. Not by choice. I told God I don't know how to pick them, so he's gonna have to plop them down in front of me.
Well, what I do say is much better than being in an abusive relationship.
Oh, much better. Right,
so
right.
That's
And
good.
And you know, Sabrina, I'm fine being alone. I've been alone practically all of my adult life. So I'm fine with being alone. I handle it really well. But, you know, as you get older and you become the first time you become a grandparent, you start thinking about, you know, how many more children you could have had. When I do my abortion stories to churches and groups that, you know, are looking for speakers, I always set up 5 chairs in front of me. And then at the very end, I introduce them to my family. Me being in one chair, my son would be in the second chair, and then the 3 empty chairs are the abortions, the children that should be here that are not. And it's a powerful demonstration of you know, how abortion affects families.
Thank you for speaking to that, because I can imagine it never gets easier. It always touches on a wound and a trauma that you have worked very hard to heal, but that is still there. And thank you for speaking to people that may have this choice or maybe in the situation that you were. What I would like to ask you is, if you were to speak to parents that maybe have a daughter, say roughly 20 years old, give or take, that sort of comes home one day in the unfortunate situation that she's pregnant. Perhaps the boyfriend's not in the picture or not very excited about the news. And those parents, they love their daughter as you love your son very, very much. So they're trying to think of this bright future that their daughter could have, and all of a sudden it's seen as this extra challenge, that you have to go through life with. You haven't gone to university yet, you haven't studied, you haven't even started your career. How would you even do that with a baby? And I feel very often in those times, those young women, they're very susceptible to the opinions of others, especially of people that are older and we assume wiser than we are, right? Mm-hmm. So if we think of those parents, they're just racking their brains of how do I choose what's best for my daughter and how can I get her to do what's best for her future? What would you say to the parents grappling with that sort of decision? What should they advise their daughter?
Well, instead of seeing it as an interruption, see it as a blessing. Love that daughter and love that baby. That's what you do. That's what I wanted someone to do for me.
Thank you for saying that. I think it's very often that people don't speak about it. People also, and I think when people are in those situations, they also don't feel like they can open up. So it's very empowering that you're talking about your experience and about what you wish was your experience back then, because I think many of us can learn from it. Now, I wanted to get back to your NDE and ask, what was the biggest shift in your life that was caused by, meeting God or Source and having this unbelievable experience?
Well, first of all, that the afterlife is real, eternal life is real. Be careful what you choose for or what you choose, because it is eternal. We don't die. When we pass over to the other side, we're still ourselves. We're on a different journey now, and we really truly are who we are on the other side. That was probably the most profound thing that I experienced, is that I did not change one bit on the other side. I was still me. I still had the same memories. I still had my same personality, the personality that is shy, so I didn't ask questions. I wish I would have. But that was probably the most profound thing. And, when the pandemic happened throughout the world, it didn't bother me. It's like, okay, if I die, I die. Okay, yay. I now get to go back over and spend some time with God, just being wrapped in his love and joy. So, and that's really the message I try to convey on the near-death experience is, don't be afraid of death. Don't be afraid to die. It is much more beautiful, much more loving, and much more joyful on the other side. Now, Sabrina, I will tell you this. I've had people that have commented on my YouTube videos that I've done about my near-death experience, and they'll say, well, your near-death experience seems pretty boring compared to others. I'm tired of you near-death experiencers saying the same old thing all the time. Sorry, but I didn't make this, God did. So take it up with God.
I'll tell you the best comment I've ever read. It takes the #1 prize for originality, which was that these NDEs are just AI created. It's an AI person and it's an AI story, and they're just all fake. And and I'm really into AI. I love it, so I try to learn as much about it as I can and use as many of the tools that I can. So my first question was, I'm sorry, do you know of a program that would be able to, generate those real people and those stories? Because I don't know of any program that would be good enough to do that. But if you do, then please share, because it would be awesome to know.
Yeah.
But I loved that comment. It made my day. I laughed
Yeah,
the
that's
whole
a
day.
good comment. That's a good comment. And when I was on the other side, this was in 1992, so The Matrix, the movie, hadn't come out yet. And I did not see any of those green lines floating down with numbers. No, that's not what I saw.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And I will say, like, our audience is, I always say, like, I think it's one of the best audiences on YouTube, because for a big percentage of the people, they're just extremely loving and positive. And kind and respectful, which I think is so rare in the age of the internet to find such a bunch of people. But they do always treat people kindly and with love. So I think that's a really important thing to say.
Well, most of these comments that are negative that I get are from the Catholic community, because what happened to me goes against Catholic teaching in their eyes. In my eyes, it does not. Because when I died, and I realized I died, I was in that black void of hell. And when I cried out to God, He saved me. So I don't know how that would be against any religious teaching, personally.
Yeah, I always say about church, it's just people sticking to some rules, and I think, and I will be fair, I've heard a few near-death experiences from people that were raised Catholic, and it strikes me that they've always experienced hell, because they were raised with, this set of rules and of sins that you almost always would have done one thing or the other wrong, so you would have sinned, so you would sort of expect that, and then it's mostly your expectation, I think, of what should happen to you or where you should go that creates that reality. Do you agree with that?
I've read about that where other people have said your near-death experience reflects your own inner belief systems. Yes, I've read that. I don't know if there's any truth to it or not. Could be. I mean, it makes sense to me. Don't know if that's true or not. But I do know that many Catholics that have had near-death experiences left the Catholic Church because of their experiences. I did just the opposite. I was trying to reconcile it with church teaching. And I've walked that road now, and I've made that transition. So, I'm pretty fine. Again, I have said to so many people, we think we have an idea of what heaven's going to be like, or what the afterlife's going to be like. We're all going to be fooled when we die. We're going to find out it's nothing like what we thought. I mean, I'm proof of that, because if you would have asked me what a near-death experience would be like, I would have never thought in a million years what I went through. I didn't see Jesus. I didn't see a physical form of God. I didn't go through a tunnel. Mine was just, not what I thought a near-death experience would be. And since, it's, thank God for YouTube, I have watched many near-death experiences, and I've been fascinated the different experiences people have had. But there is some commonality in all of them.
Yeah, and what I've also learned, so I've had a conversation with an NDE researcher, David. I won't butcher his last name, so I won't even try. But he's basically studied over, I think, 1,500 NDEs.
Oh, I interviewed him.
There you go.
Oh my gosh, now I forgot David's last name too. Yeah, he's really interesting, isn't he?
Exactly. He's so amazing. And one thing he said is that in every testimony of hell that he has heard, whenever a person was asking for the help of God or was asking God to be rescued, it always happened. So that really coincides with what you've said so beautifully, that regardless of what your belief system is, if you do find yourself in that dark space, then if you do ask for God and you ask to be rescued, most likely it will happen.
Yeah.
It's such a comforting belief. Christine, it's been so amazing speaking with you, and thank you so much for opening up and sharing your NDE, but also your personal story. I know that it's never easy to talk about, so I really applaud you for being open and vulnerable with us. And I'll also say to the audience that, you know, we can each have our own opinions and we can each do whatever is right for us. And this is just your view on it and what your belief is. So if it resonates and if it helps, then absolutely, you know, feel inspired by it and just take it forward. But if it doesn't, then this is not a place to be hateful.
Right, right. And Sabrina, this is the first interview I've gotten through without crying, so I'm making progress.
I can imagine. I saw you get teary-eyed, so I always, when that happens, I always wonder. I try to ask if you want to stop, but what I've also learned was that it's sometimes good to get those things out, and that is part of the healing. So whereas earlier I used to just stop and say like, oh no, you're in discomfort, so please don't go there. I think it's amazing that you talk about it. And I also believe that it heals a little bit the more you open up and you own up to it, which I think is just the story of your bravery. I don't see anything else there.
Well, thank you, Sabrina. I really appreciate your time.
And I really appreciate speaking with you, Christine, today. So tell me, for people that want to get in touch, and you've also mentioned having your own YouTube channel, how can they find you and how can they connect with you?
My YouTube channel is Eternal Life Plan, and it's just that easy, Eternal Life Plan, or you can Google or search by my name, Christine Harrington. I actually have a business channel, YouTube channel too, but Eternal Life Plan is my channel. Lots of different topics on there, not just near-death experience, not just abortion stories, but lots of different topics. So that's how they can reach me.